All right, what's up guys? This is Ryan from Elevate Security. Now we're going to be starting to go into some of these ports that we found open before on the Metasploitable box and really just further enumerate them. So we'll start from the top with the FTP service here. And it looks like our default scripts and our version enumeration was able to gather quite a bit of information about this particular FTP service. From the fingerprinting, we were able to get as granular as what version of FTP was running. In this case, it's VS-FTPD234. Now, there's quite a bit to that if I'm not mistaken, but before we really dive into that, let's finish going through this here, and we see that anonymous FTP login is allowed. So, like I was saying, usually, as far as I know, this is the only FTP software out there that has an RCE, and that's because there was like an actual backdoor exploit that was, I guess the software was taken over by attackers, and this backdoor was put into the code. So this is a real special case here. But typically when you see FTP, I'm not really thinking RCE because that's normally not the case. Normally I'm thinking I can gather some information from the server, maybe even upload a shell script that I can trigger if it has a web server component to it. So the first thing that I always do, well, obviously in the case here, let me just roll back really quick. In the case here, when you have this kind of information, you always want to make that your first step here. You always want to, because like I was talking about in other videos, you want to do the quickest and most low-hanging fruit stuff first. So you have this kind of granular information, you should always be searching that to see, I should add the word vulnerability in here. But in this case, it's such a notorious thing that it comes up right away, right? I would typically, Google the name of the software, the version number, and then vulnerability. But in this case, this is so notorious that it just came up without even needing that vulnerability keyword. So here's the actual payload here. So I can just go into Metasploit and pwn that here, which I'll do that in a minute, but usually you don't have low-hanging fruit this obvious, right? Normally with FTP, I'm going to be looking for, does it have anonymous FTP login? If it doesn't, then we're going to need to somehow get FTP credentials in order to access the server via FTP, which is the file transfer protocol. In this case, we see our default scripts was successfully able to get that FTP login. That's a funny thing here. I just noticed that's their slogan, I guess, secure, fast, and stable. Well, we're about to debunk that here pretty soon. But all right, so without getting too far on that tangent, let's just get right into it, right? So I'm going to use FTP, which should be pre-installed. If not, you can get it through the app repository. But in this case, I already have it. I think it came pre-packaged with this system because I don't recall downloading it or installing it or anything. So I'll put in the IP address of our target, and that's all you have to do. Now, anonymous FTP login. Normally when I think anonymous, I think empty and empty, like just empty strings, but no. In the case of anonymous FTP, it's actually login name is anonymous, and the password is anonymous. So when I type those two things in, I'm here. Now I can type help if I'm not familiar with the FTP commands, the built-in FTP commands, or if I just need a refresher. But basically you can use like ls or dir, cd, pwd, all of that stuff. So we'll see where we are right now. I think in the case of this, there's not actually anything on this server. Yeah, so we're at the root directory and there's literally nothing here. So too bad I can't really showcase stuff. If there were files and I wanted to grab some, like say there were like sensitive files that house sensitive information on here, I could use get and then the name of the file, and that would download, it would grab the file from the FTP server and download it on my machine. And now conversely, I could use the put command in order to upload a file from my, along with the name of the file, to upload a file from my machine to the FTP server. So those are the most important commands that you really need to know. The rest of these, on an as-need basis, you can search them on your own and see what they do if you need them. But those are pretty much the most common ways that I'm using it nowadays. So if I want to exit out of this, I just type quit. And yeah, really it's that simple. This one was just on FTP. I want to do a video for each of these services, really get down to what we need to cover here and really get a firm, give everything its own video, its own time in the limelight and the spotlight. But yeah, FTP, pretty simple, really. That's why this video is only, 5-6 minutes long, because it's pretty simple. I would look for credentials. If it didn't have anonymous FTP login, in this case, default scripts, why we run that SC command, or SC flag on the Nmap command, I should say, because it looks for anonymous FTP. If you have anonymous, log in with anonymous, and then see what's there. In this case, very simple, there wasn't anything there.